We have really exciting news that I'm sure most of you saw broke, and I just wanted to run through the details of it because there are a lot of questions about how this big ruling out of SCOTUS today is going to affect you. I'm so excited to break it down in bite-sized language so you can really get a grip on what this new SCOTUS ruling means when it comes to gender-affirming care for minors. Stay tuned. All right, let's get into this, you guys. And just to kind of give you like a preview of the language I'm going to use, I'm going to stay consistent with the language that's used in all of this because otherwise it's going to get really confusing. So just know that as I'm talking through this isn't the typical language I would personally use, but it's going to make a lot more sense if I stay consistent with the rulings language. Okay, so here we go. The Supreme Court had a 6-3 ruling today in United States versus Skrmetti, which upheld Tennessee's Senate Bill 1, SB 1. Now, this bill out in Tennessee passed in 2023, and it banned puberty blockers, hormone therapy, and gender-affirming surgeries for minors under 18 to treat gender dysphoria. Now, in response to SB 1, there was a lawsuit that was brought by 3 transgender teens, their families, a doctor, and the Biden administration. They argued that the law in Tennessee violates the 14th Amendment's Equal Protection Clause by discriminating based on sex and transgender status. So what happens when a state rules one way and then you have an appeal? Well, it goes on up. So the central issue is whether Tennessee's ban violated the Equal Protection Clause and the protection of the 14th Amendment, which prohibits government discrimination based on race, gender, or other characteristics. That was the whole question that tossed this thing up to SCOTUS. So the Supreme Court's decision came down today, and the conservative majority, which was led by Chief Justice John Roberts, applied rational basis review and ruled that this law in Tennessee does not discriminate based on sex or transgender status, as it regulates medical treatment uniformly for all minors. It's not discriminatory. The decision supports bans in 26 other states currently. Liz Houston, who's a White House spokesperson, said that today's landmark ruling by the Supreme Court is a victory for our Constitution, the rule of law, and common sense. There were a lot of detransitioners who were very passionate about this case and have followed it. And I want to applaud all of those amazing detransitioners who came out and really advocated for making sure that children are protected and safe. Prisha Mosley, who is a detransitioner, supported the rule, saying that it safeguarded against harmful procedures. She said the Supreme Court did the right thing. I know because I was part of a horrifying gender transition. Aaron Friday, who I love, said Justice Thomas points to the detransitioners and parent groups brief in Skrmetti. Parents and detransitioners are finally being listened to. This is a huge, huge ruling, and I'm going to get into the application of it and how it affects us even if we are in a blue state like me out here in California. But first, I want to talk to you guys about the biblical perspective on all of this. As a Christian, I have personal, very strong convictions regarding all of this, the gender ideology. But I want to tell you that as a Christian, we believe that God created people male and female. This goes all the way back to Genesis. It says that God created in Genesis 1:27, male and female, he created them. And so we are coming from a place that argues that this ban protects God's original design, that the procedures that we have been seeing doled out on kids that are irreversible and cause tremendous damage are actually in conflict with divine order, the way that our world was designed to run. So as a Christian, we applaud this ruling, and this is a huge win for Christian families. Dr. Albert Mohler, who, if you don't already, I would highly, highly encourage you to follow his Daily Briefing said, "This ruling honors God's truth about the human body and protects our children from harm, reflecting the biblical call to steward life wisely." As Christians, we take this ruling as a massive blessing, a huge victory, and we can celebrate that the Supreme Court, although not fully unanimous as we believe it should have been, got this one right. Of course, there was a dissenting opinion, so let's get into the dissent. Liberal justices Sonia Sotomayor, Alina Kagan, and Ketanji Brown Jackson dissented, arguing that the law discriminates based on sex and it undermines equal protection, which is a joke. Sotomayor warned of harm to transgender youth and broader implications. Sotomayor said this law conditions the availability of medications on a patient's sex by retreating from meaningful judicial review exactly where it matters most. The court abandons transgender children and their families to political whims. Sotomayor also said that the decision invites legislatures to engage in discrimination. Obviously, the overwhelming position of the highest court of the land disagreed with the dissent. So let's talk about how this ruling will be rolled out and how it's going to actually affect the youth. So there are 27 states with bans on gender-affirming care. This will impact about 300,000 transgender youth aged 13 to 17. Major medical groups like the American Academy of Pediatrics support gender-affirming care, which is crazy that we're still that far behind, but it's a reality. And so, of course, they're sounding the alarm that this is going to harm the transgender community because little kids cannot acquire care that will irreversibly change them for life. One of the quotes is from Dr. Susan Cressley. She's president of the American Academy of Pediatrics. She says that regardless of today's legal ruling, the science still supports gender-affirming care. Children will still need it. She's literally saying that kids need to have their body parts cut off and to be filled and pumped full of hormones and medication that they will be hooked on for life. I will leave that to the audience to decide whether or not you agree with that. Okay, implications for states without bans. States like California, where I am, we are a sanctuary state for transgender youth. That means that if you live in a different state and your state has bans on transgender care, you can come to California and you can acquire all of the care that is illegal in your state. And I say care in quotes. So how will this affect California? Well, California's laws such as AB 2119 protect, access, and shield families fleeing restrictive states. This ruling today, though, could put a dent on that in a positive for those of us who are against gender affirmative care for youth, because this now could prompt legal challenges citing the SCOTUS ruling that just came out today. Trans Family Support Services said that California remains a safe haven for transgender youth, but this ruling may flood our clinics as families escape bans elsewhere. Yes, it may flood our systems, but it will be interesting to see if there are legal challenges made now because of the precedent set by SCOTUS today. Most importantly, this ruling means that states who already have bans in place are now supported by the highest court in the land, saying that states and parents can act responsibly to protect kids from gender ideology that ultimately pushes kids onto a conveyor belt that cuts and drugs them and permanently alters them for life. So this is a big win for those of us who are sane, who want to see our kids protected, who for a long time have seen America as being kind of behind the tide in understanding the damage that's being done to our kids with gender affirming care. So this ruling will complicate challenges to bans in other states, and it might shape federal policies under the Trump administration, which again would be a huge next step in this whole fight against the gender ideology cult that has been aimed at our kids for far too long. So that's the update on this huge ruling that just broke from the Supreme Court today. Again, 6-3 ruling, and it's a huge win for those of us who have been in the camp of protecting kids from the dangers of not only gender ideology, but gender affirmative care. Let me know what you think, and like and subscribe. Please share this if you found it helpful, and subscribe to The Britt Mayer Show across all platforms.